My name is Joel Christian Gil. I am the chair, the inaugural chair of the MFA in Visual Narrative at Boston University. And I am going to be hosting, or basically asking Tim some questions and Julian some questions about the book, The Comet Cometh. The talk is titled The Comet Cometh, Ethical Art, Innovation, and Creating the Comet. I'm going to let my esteemed guests also introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Tim.
I am Tim Fielder. I am a visual Afrofuturist and graphic novelist who had the good fortune to receive the blessing to produce The Comet, which is a short story by W.B. Du Bois. And I received the blessing of the great-grandson of Du Bois to produce it. And I have been a digital artist for the last 25, going on 30 years. And I am employing all manners of tools and techniques over that time, most recently moving from game engines to now employing elements of AI as part of my toolkit.
Right. Julian, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Julian Chambliss. I'm professor of English at Michigan State University. I also serve as the Val Behrman Curator of History at the MSU Museum. I'm happy to be here to talk with Tim and with you, Joel, about AI and the Comet COMETH.
All right. So, Tim, the first couple of questions are going to come directly at you. So, tell us first of all, tell everybody what is the Comet Cometh.
Okay, so the Comet Cometh is the show that is done in conjunction with my company is Diesel Funk Studios, and we're an official festival partner with Carnegie Hall during their Weimar Republic festival, which has been going on since January and it lasts till May. And during this show, I'm producing art from the Comet that is on exhibit at the Children's Arts Carnival at 62 Hamilton Terrace in Harlem. In addition to that, I have the series here that we're on now, Comet COMETH Talks. And very early next month in May, well, month after next, we'll be doing a reading, which is going to be a lot of fun. So I am using, because I'm 57 years old at the time of this talk, I'm using things that will allow me to actually produce the work and not die, which is the objective.
So define that, define produce,
okay,
not die.
All right, that's a very good question. All right, so
that ties into the actual question, which is how do you
create
the Comet? So that ties into the question. So how do you create the work and not die?
All right, so back in the Stone Ages, you used to have to use paint, acrylic, watercolor. I myself was partial to gouache to paint, right? And that's murder, because you have to sit there and paint everything. And it's great. I did great work with it. The early part of my career from the 80s and the 90s was that. But in the late 90s, I made the transition over to digital illustration, Photoshop, a fractal painter, which eventually became Meta Creations Painter. And ultimately, most recently now, a lot of people have integrated Clip Studio Paint into their work. But along that time, I began to use, because I spent the first quarter of my career in comics, and then the middle section of it was spent in gaming and animation. I worked in the gaming industry. I taught gaming, did a lot of teaching. And while I was there, my skill set became progressively more and more digital, to the point where I began to use 3D models. So I've been using 3ds Max for about 25 years now. So when I use projects like Maddie's Rocket, that work would be done where the backgrounds would be done like an animated film or a live action film. It would literally be a 3D environment. And I would use what's called a paint over technique. That's like modeling. It's like matte painting for films. And that's great, but it still hurts when you do that work, because you got to paint it. You have to paint everything, right? So I kept working. That stayed the same for many, many years. The only difference that would change would be that the systems and the computers became more powerful, but you always had to deal with that rendering from 3D, right? So if you had, I use 3ds Max, other people use Maya, or some people use Blender. When I use those programs and I would build a scene, to render out one image would oftentimes take hours, if not days, to render. So I did it because that's what I did, right? I learned all those techniques while working in the gaming industry. So, but then over the last 5 years or so, game engines like Unreal and Unity became real time. So all of a sudden you could produce scenes that had real time lighting and shadows. So the paint, you still would paint, but it would give you 3D. In the past would be, you would get shapes, forms, and perspective for free, but you couldn't get shadows and lighting, right? That took a while. But with gaming engines, all of a sudden you could get all of it for free, right? You still had to work with the models, still had to build the models and do that. And it was great. And I really use that heavily on Maddie's Rocket. But now, you know, it's hard doing all that stuff, right? It's very, very hard. And the rendering, the amount of time you have to, when I worked on Infinitum, my book with HarperCollins, you know, yeah, I built some 3D environments, but you still got to sit there and paint all that stuff. And there are points where I thought to myself, well, man, maybe I should have just kept doing just, you know, like a regular comic book artist, you know, you draw it in pencil, or, a black line in Photoshop, and you refine it with ink in Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint, and you do it. But it still takes an incredibly long time if you're doing full on, fully rendered images. It takes a toll. So after I did Infinitum, I couldn't work for several months after, because the nerve endings in my arms had gone out, because every image is a painting. So I'm not trying to do that. I love drawing illustration a lot, but I don't love it that much. You know, I'm not one of those fools. Well, let me take that back. I was one of those fools. You know, I want to feel the paint. That's what I literally said. I don't want to feel the paint anymore. I don't want to feel the paint.
I had a friend, Alec Longstreth, who used to do. Alec is a teacher at the Center for Cartoon Studies.
Mm-hmm. In Vermont.
Yeah, he does a book called. He does an online comic called Isle of Elsie, and before that, he did this comic called Basewood. And it took him 7 years to draw it, and he didn't cut his hair or like his beard while he did this thing. And Alec is fantastic. He's a great speaker, but he was drawing like 18 by 24-inch pages, and he was drawing the snow scene. This was black and white. It was snow scene. And so he was like, it was really important for me to paint every single to have no tangents. No two snowflakes were touching each other. So he had like every snowflake was like this or like this. And you know, in Photoshop, you know this, you can add black to the background, right? You can just drop black in the background. You're going to digitally put this stuff in there anyway. And it was like, Alec, why didn't you just go in? He was like, it was important to me. I had to do it. And then after doing it and working on his next book, his next lectures were like, don't do what I just did.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Look. There's a thing in Photoshop called a brush.
Yeah.
And they actually have snow brushes.
No brushes, that's right.
And then guess what they look like? Snow. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And I remember my dear friend, who I love so much, told me back in the 90s. I remember I'd gone to SIGGRAPH in the late 90s, and I was telling him, man, I've been using Photoshop and Painter, you know, and I was in a grocery store or something, was taking a break. You know, my dad had gone, we went to SIGGRAPH. SIGGRAPH's the big computer convention, you know, and I was becoming the egghead and everything. And I was like, yeah, man, you know, this Photoshop, man, that's the way, man, that's the future. He said, Timmy, he's from Britain. I'm a bad accent. He says, Tim, it's a fad and it's going to go away. It did not go away. It did not go away. It is part of, and there were people like, why would you not draw on paper and pencil? I never forget, I was working with Arthur Sudan. This is the first comics job I had done for this really bad soft porn comic called Forbidden Zone. Arthur Sudan was the artist, and those were the first breakdowns that I did in digital, right, in Photoshop, and he didn't know they were digital when I first gave them to him, right? And I said, no, these are done in Photoshop. He said, it looks like pencil, and I said, yes, that's the point. And since that point, that time, my idea is if you are using digital, the objective is that you don't want it to appear to be digital.
Yeah. I mean,
So let me say this last part. My point is, my goal and objective with using the digital technology that I employ in my work is that although I'm using digital technology, I don't want there to be any discernible drop in quality. That's the objective. If it looks like my old stuff or it looks like my style, then I've won.
So, Julian, you're an English professor. So AI is probably it's probably something that English professors are like running head in. Like just like in a lot of ways, I feel like this is my personal opinion. I think writing is going to be affected more but then art is going to be affected because you can't like people can edit that and you can't tell. So what are your thoughts on AI and how it's being used right now?
Well, I appreciate that question. Obviously, you're correct. As an English professor, Michigan State and many of our colleagues in the Big Ten are actively involved.
He's stalling, Joel. He's stalling.
Are actively involved in a conversation about AI. I've been using AI in my classes in part because I do see it as part of a pattern of technological intervention that sort of disrupts how we expect education to go. I'm old enough that I remember the impact of Wikipedia and the fears that we had about the access to information associated with that. And I tend to talk to students about quality versus just simple form, right? So one of the things I will point out to people is, yes, ChatGPT can write an essay, but it won't be an essay. And so it's the same problem you had when you were copying Wikipedia. Yes, you have an essay, but it's not an essay, right? So the question here becomes about, for me, information literacy and information fluency. You know, are you able to sort of understand the quality of information created by ChatGPT? And that is the real impact. It is an impact on the sort of the way that the outputs in these things, from a text standpoint, seem very confident in the way that they sound, in a way that is quite compelling for people who don't know, right? If you don't know and you're reading something coming out of ChatGPT, it can be really compelling. I think it's the same is true when it comes to something that's visual. If you're unfamiliar with techniques and the details, really the thing that sort of set apart the sort of AI images, I think, in the minds of a lot of people versus those things created by people like Tim. So for me, I think the question really becomes, are we building within our students the capacity to discern, to have a kind of qualitative lens that allows them to sort of understand what they're seeing and make judgments? And that's a 21st century question that education is always concerned with. Like, are we creating students who are going to be good citizens? Are they going to have the toolkit to be able to address the way that the world is changing? That's why I always tell them, like, that's why we have a general education curriculum. That's where we teach you the skills that are going to allow you to be good citizens. And so it's important. And in fact, that's where I do my AI stuff. I do it in my gen ed course, because, hey, this is something that you're going to have to contend with. If you don't know what it is, you don't understand what it's doing. So, questioning it, asking a really important question about the nature of the things that is being produced, how it's producing it, the biases that are sort of hidden within that. Those are really important questions for us to answer. In the case of someone like Tim, though, I will point out that nothing that Tim describes is really, the AI isn't doing his work of being creative. It's aiding in his work of being creative. And I have thought about this in a way. And I do have a lot of concerns around AI, make no mistake, especially in terms of how the models were created and some algorithmic biases that we're really familiar with, been talking about for many years. But, one impact of AI from an expert standpoint is around quality. It's not necessarily around, it's around a question of like ability and discernment, which I say is the same sort of questions that I would put to someone thinking about text.
I think it's interesting that you say about quality, because there's 2 points I want to make. My wife works in healthcare IT, and she dealt with a lot of algorithms. And one of the things that she said in the process of when AI was starting to become popular last year is like, it's only going to be as good as the information we put in it, right? Oh, if you guys remember, Harvard did a study where they were going to start letting, it was Cambridge, it was the city of Cambridge, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to let algorithms start giving sentences to people. So they figured this would be bad judgment. But the information that they put in had, the implicit bias that was built in it. So you were seeing people, Black people, when somebody was Black, they were actually getting harsher sentences based on the AI because the bad information is going in. And the second point I want to make about that is that, I personally, I don't think there's a problem with AI. I think there's a problem with capitalism, because here's the point. This is the point I'm going to make. I saw Tim making this, I see Tim like, what's the problem with capitalism? In a capitalist society in which we don't have to John Henry ourselves as artists, right? We don't have to John Henry ourselves against machines. In a society where we don't have to do that, I will continue to make art if it's not based on my livelihood. So you can put machines out in the world and they can make as much art as they want to. That's just going to make me want to work harder, right? That's going to benefit everybody. That doesn't work in a capitalist society because we're actually competing. So that means that I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to make my living while you're going to start paying this robot to do a thing, right? In a socialist or a, utopian society, when the robot is cleaning the bathroom, I'm making art. You know what I'm saying? But what we have now is the robot is making art, so I'm gonna have to go clean the bathroom, right? So that's part of it. The second point I want to make is just like thinking about the ethical usage, which I think, Julian, the third point. This is the third point. See you raising your hand. I got you. The third point I want to make.
Okay, go ahead. When you finish, I got to go because I got to ask a question about the bathroom thing. But go ahead, man. Keep going.
So the thing about ethical use is it reminds me of when I was in grad school and I got my MFA in painting. So I was one of those people like the tactile touch, but I have a degree in design too. So it was like I was doing a lot of different things at the same time. And I got the honor to talk to Leon Golub, who was a pioneering painter, painted in the 70s, did a lot of Vietnam War paintings. And at the time I was painting a lot for photographs and I was catching a lot of hell for it. And so I actually asked him, he was like 90 years old, and like cornered him in a room and was like, tell me about using photographs. And he was like, the point about using a tool to help you is not to let the tool do too much of the work for you. And so like that's the thing that I think is interesting about how you specifically work, Tim, because a lot of people who are using AI in their workflow are basically just, in a lot of ways, just pushing a button and saying, hey, I want this thing. And then you are not doing that. So why don't you talk a little bit more about how you use it and incorporate it into your workflow?
Okay. First of all,
you can make that other point too, but I want you to talk about.
Well, I get what you're saying about the bathroom thing. I get it. It's just that. Hold on one second. Girl, what are you doing? I'm in the middle of a podcast here. What are you doing? I'm interviewing the comic. Hey, we'll talk later, girl. Anyway. So, all right. We'll cut this part out. All right. So, what was I saying? So, fantastic question, Joel. I think this. I don't have a problem with those who do text prompts. I don't.
That's where we diverge.
But let me qualify that though, because it is a mode of working, right, that exists. The same reaction that people had with airbrushing. Why are you using an airbrush? Why can't you just take a brush like a normal human being, right, and create a gradient. It's more pure. This is cheating, right? I'm saying I don't have a problem with text prompting. What I have a problem with is when you use a text prompt and you input an actual artist's name in the prompt. You're telling the prompt directly to pull from that artist's work. And let's be frank, I know some artists that look, they stole my work. They stole everybody's work. They stole, if you go on any of those sites, I Am Learned or Have I Been Scraped or whatever it's called, right? You can find my stuff on there. You can find everybody's stuff on there. They didn't collect some of the images, they collected all of the images, right? And did they steal it? Probably, right?
No, I don't think that's a probably question, because if they didn't pay you and they're using your work, they stole it.
Look, man, I'm trying to have a conversation here because there are those people who say the only way this can work, right, is that we just have to completely scrap everything and start over from scratch.
No, that's why. So, like, yeah, I don't make that argument.
But there are people out there who do. And I think any intelligent person knows that's not going to happen.
Right.
That's simply not going to happen, right? So when 3D hit, right? And I moved to 3D when Titanic came out. Remember Titanic? Oh, he's spending too much money on this movie using 3D, right? And it came up and it was the biggest, yeah, that movie was the biggest thing since everything, right?
$1 billion movie?
Yeah. And that's when I heavily started moving into 3D because I realized, oh, okay, I don't have to draw this dense urban dystopia. I can build it, right? Now, I love the fact that I still have to draw within that, right? So for me, the ethical issues, right? When I say, did they steal the images? Probably, yes, absolutely, they stole it, right? But in certain cases, they actually own their libraries, right? So in the case of Adobe, they have their own libraries that they pull from. And is it right or wrong? Of course it's wrong. However, when a person created fire, this is my example, right? Fire was the most dominant technology. When it came, it made people warm, it provided light. But then if you didn't regulate it, it could do what? Burn down an entire city, right? Gunpowder. Oh man, I don't have to go and hunt with a bow and arrow or go up and fight one of these bears by hand, right? I can shoot the bear and eat, right? Now, that is a very, very kind of raw example. I'm saying technology disrupts. And very often there's a level of unregulated innovation that happens in every sufficiently advanced technology. Apple is sued all the time. They didn't create the GUI. Xerox PARC created the GUI, right? But Steve Jobs saw it and he said, whoa, this is a great idea. Next thing you know, GUI, right? So my point is, I am not trying, and I hope this answers your question. Oh, because I'm bringing a little humor to it, but I'm trying to be honest. I am not trying to provide I'm not trying to provide an ethical solution to AI usage. I am trying to, as an artist, figure out how I can exist, right? As what you said, Joel, working harder. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to survive in this environment. Go ahead.
I'm afraid, Julian, because it seemed like you wanted to say something a couple of times when we were talking about this stuff. So I want to get your input.
Right. I think I want to acknowledge the regulatory question, and obviously because the technology is new, it is already on the books that you have the right to make money off of your license and your work, and these models are being created by scraping publicly accessible information that's on the internet. And we are going to have a conversation that is, you know, the United States and the rest of the world about the sort of regulatory structure around profitability, to your point, Joel, about capitalism. Because capitalism wants to make money. And so therefore, since AI makes money, it's going to continue. The question is, if there is no regulation, then the danger becomes nobody can make money because it'll just like proliferate out of control. And so, you know, I point out that Tennessee just passed the law that really strengthens the use of AI to generate voices, obviously because, you know, Nashville and country music. And those laws are most likely going to be adopted or mirrored in a number of other states. A lot of states have these laws on the books. And that is going to be one of the things. I don't know that we're necessarily going to get. It's always very difficult to imagine like national legislation, especially from our government. They can't pass much of anything. But at the state level, I think we will see some things, and that might address some of these questions. But ultimately, a fundamental question that everybody has to ask is how are they training these things and what's the data? Because the data itself remains quite biased, even as they're you know, training on these massive libraries that Tim is referencing, right? Because we know from many years of conversation and dialogue that there's not enough diversity in the things that are used to train it and to train machines, right? Machine learning is not new. And we have plenty of books and researchers who talk about the ways that machines learn bad things. And there are plenty of people around the world, especially in academia, that talk about the need to broaden the nature of the information, to broaden access to models that are being used in an electronic way. So on the one hand, making this argument, hey, we're going to scrap this and stop this. Well, that is actually, that's not realistic. And because you're so focused on this thing that's not realistic, you're missing the very pivotal set of conversations that can be had right now about funding more things to make sure that the models that are being used are more equitable, funding more things to make sure that there are certain basic rights for people who produce things as creatives, as like a baseline. Those things are real things that you can do because there's so much money to be made. So right now, people are like, yes, let's make a deal. So I don't have to worry about lawsuits, right? So I just think that there's a way where when we're having these conversations, to your point, capitalism is notorious for how it operates, but it's pretty consistent. It don't never lie to you. I want my money and I want as much as I can get, or will you make a deal with me? And you know, you have to like sort of applaud the artists who can navigate that. This is a preeminent problem of all artists all through time and space. How do you survive? How do you do your art and make money? And this is a new front on that classic question.
I'm gonna just go back to something you said, Tim, that I think I just want to be real clear about, like why, you know, I specifically have a problem with people who only use text prompts, right? Because I don't have to say I want a style, I make this character like Tim Fielder's work. I don't actually have to say that, right? I can say, give me a futuristic character. And if it's trained on your work, I can just keep hitting iterate until I get the kind of work that looks like yours. And so that's different than what it used to be for me to actually copy a Tim Fielder. I can copy one all day, every day, but there's always a situation in which somebody is going, like it's going to be me, right? There's going to be subtle differences. You'll be able to tell, right? Everybody's going to be able to tell that. And so what the scary thing about AI is that it can come, like there's a woman, I forget her name, who is like one of the most copied artists from she just draws these black and white comics, and she puts them on Instagram. She's got like millions of followers, and white supremacists have legitimately co-opted her work, and they're using them in comics, and they're just basically making copies of her work, and it's like stuff that she didn't do, right? Because it can actually just take, I forget her name, but you can take her style and just mimic it, and then like she looks at this work and she's like, this looks like my work. And so like that's the problem. Without that's the thing. That's why I was talking about capitalism, right? And I think that point you said, Julian, about capitalism won't lie to you, right? It definitely says it's out to make money. And when you have, a predatory capitalism system like we actually have here in America, its goal is to take as much from the worker as possible. And in this instance, the worker is us, the artist. And it's trying to take that. And what it's doing, what I don't think they realize in a lot of ways, is the people who want to use this stuff, is that it's going to disincentivize artists from making new work and putting it online. And so you might actually have a new renaissance of people making analog work that will not exist online. If it ever exists online, it's going to exist in low res, so it cannot. There are actually people putting out programs right now that are like AI killers, that like whenever you try to make a work like a specific type of thing, it actually has it's been fed so much into it that it'll actually kill that work. So I think that there is going to be they're going, and to your point too, Julian, like there are laws on the book. Like you can, like Tim, if you created an entire AI book cover, right, that's all AI art, which I forget, it's like the Ninth Circuit just said you can't copyright these things.
Right.
I can take that and make a copy of that. I don't have to even I can just use the same font, right? Because I can buy the same font, make a book that looks exactly like yours, and get it distributed in the bookstore. And now I'm deleting your book scales because how many of us have ever gone to the bookstore and bought the same book twice, right? Now you're buying a book that's not yours, right? And so I think that and this country loves regulation, right? The free market about everything, right? And so, like, without putting those proper guide rails on it, I think people are going, like, and I am a proponent, like, don't get me wrong, I'm a proponent of using a thing, like learning how to use it before it actually takes over, because like capitalism wants to do what it does, right? So I need to figure out how to use this too. But so we're going to get back to you, Tim, telling us exactly how you use it. But I think it's really important to note that until we start doing this, like we need to be raising the alarm for this stuff, because people they're not paying attention. I don't think they're paying proper attention to it. Like I think musicians are, like this laws in Nashville, like that whole, like just recently that the Drake, comeback to Kendrick that just came out was all fake. Most people didn't know it, right? Didn't know that it was an AI. So John Carlin did an entire stand-up that was on YouTube that was all John Carlin, that was all fake, right? That was all AI generated. So I think that we have to put some guardrails on it. But Tim, I want to be real specific about your process, because in me, casting as much shade on AI as I am right now, I do think that there are ethical ways to use it. And I think one of the ways that are ethically important is the way you use it. So why don't you really specifically talk about your process?
Okay. So I have certain guardrails, ineffective, but they're guardrails nevertheless. One, if you're going to use a written prompt, never use another artist's name. You don't refer to them, right? Yes, Joel, I agree. You can continue to iterate to get something that looks, because they scraped everything. Okay, fine, right? They didn't stop George Lucas from wholesale taking from Frank Herbert, but hey, I still watch Star Wars, right? All right, so with text prompting, that's what I do. However, when I do my work always begins with a drawing. I use my drawing as an image prompt. Why do I do that? I am not trying to have my work look like someone else's work. I want it to be my work. And the first rule is always, whatever you do must start with your drawing. Now, the other rule over that is that once you use that in an image prompt, in an AI piece of software, and it gives you output, once you get that output, you're done with the AI. Everything else becomes painting, right? Everything else becomes painting, right? Because
it speeds you up, though. Talk about how it speeds your process up.
Okay, but that's what I'm gonna get to. I'm even going to do some screen share. You'll see how it works. All right, why do I do that? Because the most difficult part of working, the work that I do, the infinitums, the Maddie's rocket, it's all of that freaking painting. It takes hours and hours, and it is brutal. how hard, how long I have to work to do that work. And it's tedious. All right. So rendering takes the longest. The drawing is actually very quick, relatively, right? The breakdown, the sketches, the refining of the sketches, that's pretty quick. It's the toning. I'm sorry?
Not for me, it's not.
Well, okay, but I'm talking about me now, man. I'm talking about me, right? Yeah. But all joking aside, the drawing does take a long time. But the thing that is absolute, and think about it. Even we're referring to your style, you have to go through enough hell as it is just to draw it. But when you color, you tend to use flat colors, correct? With very little modeling, right? Me, the dummy, decides I want every page and image to look like it's painted, right? That takes hours and hours and days to do, right? I think about one of my good influences, a guy by the name of Chris Moeller, who does a series of books called Iron Empire. It takes him 4 years to do one book because everything is painted analog. Beautiful books, right? But I always feel like at the end of it, I'm like, damn, I gotta wait another 4 years before I see another episode or read another episode of Iron Empire, right? And I always see a lot of people who are like pros, or they write prose, they can bang out a book in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, if they focus. Graphic novels, anywhere from, 90 to 200 or 300 pages, that stuff takes months or years. However, with AI, it so dramatically reduces the rendering part that it is my theory, and I'm still testing this out. In my theory, I believe it is possible to produce a 150 to 250 page graphic novel in under 3 months. What does that mean? That means that just as you said, capitalism is going to do what it does, and just as Julian said, hey, it's going to create problems, but it creates tremendous opportunity. If an artist is courageous enough to dig after this tool, right? Not as a beginning and end, but as a component of their already existing toolkit, it can change the game. So now at 57, I don't have to be worried about whether or not I'm not going to finish the 6 to 8 episode series of Maddie's Rocket. I figure it's going to take me 6 to 8 books to tell the story of her life. But if it takes me 3 years to do one book, that's a problem. Now, I've already gotten that number down with the implementation of 3D and gaming engines, but now I can get it down even more to where I may be able to produce that 120 to 150 page graphic novel within 2 to 3 months. That's incredible. That's incredible. And further, to be frank with you, I got depressed like everybody else in late 2022. I was depressed for about a week and a half, and I said, oh my God, this thing that I've learned how to do my entire life, all of a sudden it's useless. But then after a week or so, I said, look, we can't do this because we've been through this before. We went through this with Photoshop. We went through this with 3ds Max. We went through this with gaming engine. We went through it with all these different things. It's like, oh my God, I've got to learn how to build my own website. We're constantly learning. We're constantly learning. I know some artists don't like that. They don't like to, and frankly, why would Alex Ross move to digital? He already has an established market. Why would James Gurney move to digital, even though he does use digital from time to time? But it's like, why would he? He already has an established market. But for those people who are trying to iterate quickly, finish blocks of content quickly with no discernible drop in quality, as long as you use the technique that I am referring to, I believe it can be done with some level of ethical integrity intact, right? And done in a way where it maintains your style. That's what I believe. Now, I am terrified.
Let me ask you this question, because I think
okay.
And Julian, you can answer this too. What is style?
You want to
Yeah.
start with Julian or me first?
Start with Julian, and then we'll come to you. What do you say is style?
I think style is the attributes that you associate with a particular artist in dialogue with sort of expectation, right? You know, style is at some level both your ability to hit the precepts associated with what's standardized in a particular field of endeavor, but how you uniquely express yourself within that endeavor is the thing that does sort of denotes your style, right? And that's the thing I think about AI that is the most frustrating for artists and all creatives at some level. It's mimicking other people's established practice, like the style they've created through their countless hours, years of honing their craft, right? And it's using that, studying them in as a corpus, and then mimicking it back in a way that cuts out the hard work that they put in to go from a beginner to a professional to, you know, a sort of like, you know, top of their field kind of thing. And that's the thing about it that is so frustrating for the creative. I've also argued that one of the things about it that is liberating for people who are not experts in a particular creative field is they may have aspirations or inspirations because of they might like art, they might like music, and this tool gives them an opportunity, or these tools give an opportunity to sort of experiment in that space. To sort of, and I would point out, like, you know, for people in Afrofuturism in particular, the joy of getting to see some of the images in their head that are inspired by sort of Afrofuturist ideas is a real driver for their engagement with AI visualization tools. You know, but that's how I would answer the question about style.
And what do you say?
Okay.
Style?
Me, right? It's a style is a defining characteristic. It can be visual, it can be oral, it can be tactile, that defines a specific mode. That mode can be an individual artist, individual visual artist, individual singer, individual fine artist. It is a style. It is a affect of that person's individual style, individual talent, and way of seeing the world and interacting with the world. So a rhythm, a pattern, right? That is indicative, that is used more than once, is a style. A stroke of a pen, a stroke of a digital pen, a stroke of an analog pen, a brush is a style. There are other artists that have multiple styles. They have things in comics where they call it A style, B style, C style. A style is, right? I work in A style. I'm stuck in that gear. I got to stop before it kills me, right? B style is a little bit of both. C style is where you can work really fast, right? But all three styles are supposed to hold the quality. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would say style is the culminating process of practice, mistake, and perseverance. I would say that's what happens when you get to the end of a style, right? Because we practice things over and over and over again until that practice becomes memory, muscle memory. And I think and then you are incorporating mistakes, right? Whether it's like, I'm not going to do that again, or, ooh, that's awesome. That's actually dope. I'm going to do that again. And then just that muscle memory of those things. And here's my issue with prompt artists. They don't have that. They don't have that, like in the way in which you work, in the way that you work, you have a practice. You have you know, like I have a drawing, I'm going to put it in here. I'm looking for a specific type of thing. Not necessarily what those people did, it's what I'm looking for. And so I think we should probably go next into your process and just show some screenshots specifically.
Okay. And
but then, you know, and I would say, and this is my beef against the prompt artist, right? It's because this week it could be art that sort of looks like Romare Bearden. Next week, it could be art that sort of looks like Ivan Le Lorraine Albright. The week after that, Jacob Lawrence, because that's just what they're doing. And none of that stuff is a specific style that they have labored over and gone through. It's just like, I don't, and in my opinion, pushing the button iterate is not it's not a generation of style. It's just
Okay.
getting another example of the looking for something. You can say that they are curators. You can, I believe that I would say that people who are making AI art are curators. I don't see them as artists because they're actually using other people's work to basically put together a group of things, and that's what a curator does.
Okay, fine. I, as an operator, right? I'm going to leave who determines that to other people.
I'll be
That
there.
is fine. Fine. You're great at it. You're great at it. I can't do that. I can't do that. I am much more primarily concerned with generating product in my style, right? Finished product in my style to market.
Okay.
That is my primary objective. Delivering
So show us some of your work. I want to see this. I want people to see this thing because I want
okay.
Interesting thing about it.
All right. Now, before I show this to the people watching this video, I understand that AI is scary. It's very scary. And there are people who say, well, I don't think it's going to affect jobs. Oh, it's definitely going to affect jobs. It's going to destroy some companies. And alternatively, it's going to create entirely new jobs, as well as create entirely new companies and entirely new industries.
You're talking to people who are still mad about Radio Shack.
Blockbuster Video. It's going to happen. Forgive me, that's wrong. It is happening.
Yeah.
It's happening right now as we're having this conversation. What I am trying to do as an artist is to commodify what it means for me as an individual artist to exist in this world, to exist in this environment. I'm not afraid of AI anymore. I used to be, but now, not so much. Why? Because I have found a way to use AI for my purposes. To that end, let's go to the tape. Right now, we're going to share a screen here, and I'm sure we're about to get a bog down here, but we're going to share the screen here, and then we will go into what we're going to do. I'm going to share screen. All right. And I'm going to share. Yes, that's it. We got to share screen there. All right. So you all can see my screen. Okay. Check it out. The way I've worked before in the past, this is how I work. Basically, I don't know if you guys can see that. Yes, you can see it. That's a sketch. That sketch is done in Photoshop using a stylus, right? That sketch is then refined, right? Even though I'm not drawing on paper, I'm drawing on a screen. But it's pretty much the same way. I'm just not using chemicals. I'm using digital pixels to draw that sketch out. That sketch is then refined to a tighter drawing. This is the point where Joel was talking about that drawing kicks the butt. This is the part. This is the butt kicking part. This can be very tedious, right? From there, I then add tones. And those tones indicate light, shadow, form, right? From there, I add color or hues. And those hues give me some indication of what's happening. You can see the little wrap around the characters next. This is the image from Infinitum. And from there, I add harsh lights. So what I'm doing at this point is I'm adding photographic phenomena, light bloom, harsh lights, edge lights. I'm adding it to my drawing to give the illusion of life. It's still the drawing, but what I'm doing, this is what every artist does, well, that draws representationally, right? Because some fine artists, they don't give a damn about none of this. They just do whatever they want. But if you are a representational artist, tends to be what you're doing. From there, it goes here. I'm adding in background. So things like light rays, things like that, that's what I'm adding to the shot. I'm adding specularity. These things are not perfect. What they're doing is they're done in my style. And this is great. And this image here, I suppose, when I drew this image, took several hours, right? This is from Infinitum. Now, the way I work is I use tools to iterate more quickly. So when I saw Mid-Journey in late 2022 and went into my depression and all of that, I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? Then I began to say, well, okay, what can I do? So for example, you see this image here. This is an image from High John Conqueror, right? I've been working on High John Conqueror for several years. It's my kind of freakish retelling of John Carter, Warlord of Mars, but told from my perspective, right? And what I would do is I would have to do the typical thing, as you can see here with this image. So as I'm drawing, what's happening is I'm getting visual reference offline, and I'm sketching it out because I'm like, wow, that's a good design for a plantation, right? But I said, I'm going to put this thing on top because there's a scene in here with a plantation, and that's cool. But I want it to be rendered, fully rendered. So how do I pull that off? So as I go through all these images here, let's say, for example, this image here, right? This is good. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the one. Yeah, that image there. All right, so that is drawn and illustrated in Clip Studio Paint, pretty traditionally, right? Sketch, same way I showed Infinitum, but this one here, I wanted the hard line like a comic book. And I love this stuff. It's great, right? Photoshop, Clip Studio Paint, bring it on. I love it, right? But the problem is I actually want to finish the work, right? Same thing. Here, look here. Drawing, tones, highlights, color. So when I'm working, I have all of the training and underpinnings of a traditional artist because I am a traditional artist. I'm a traditional artist that went to digital. Okay, enough of this. Now, how is AI being used? AI is being used in such a way where initially I have what my friend Mark refers to AI guilt. AI guilt is where you're drawing, like, for example, these are pages from High John Conqueror. Let's see if I can pull this up here. And this is a scene where the character is transported to the different dimension and environment. And these are regular drawings, right? All done, right? Ink line, all done, right? Cool. But I want these images to be rendered. I want them to have a certain level of paint to it. Okay, I could go in and paint, but damn, it's going to take me 3 days to finish that. How do I get around that? I get around it by doing this. Once those ink lines are done, I then begin to employ elements of AI. So for example, in this, I took a drawing, I imported it in, I took a sky that was generated in AI, and I imported it into the sky, right? It's still a sketch, it's still a drawing, right? I still have to go in and paint, but what it's doing is reducing the amount of paint and rendering that I have to employ, right? Now, I used this technique for several months, and it was not as fast. It produced an effect that I thought that was good, right? So for example, if we could, let's see if I can pull that up here. I don't know if I have that up here, but that image actually came from this image. So I go here and I go here.
So did you put that image, did you put this image into?
That's my drawing. I
Right.
did not. Because at the time when I was doing this, using drawings as image prompts was not a thing. This was done in early 2023. This is before people began to deploy image prompts. Everything was still text prompted, right? But what I did was I did it in such a way where I could generate skies, right? If you want to generate a great looking sky with clouds, that's an hour. Here, 5 minutes. And then I can still go into Photoshop and tweak it, right? Was this sky and cloud stolen from an artist? Maybe, maybe, but damn, that sky looks pretty good, right? All right. Again,
So, but here's the thing though. This is like using the sky, going in and getting a sky is a lot like using collage. So like still you're not letting the thing do the work for you. So that's
Joel, it is not a lot like using collage. It is absolutely the same. I am taking a sky and I'm employing it in my work. Now, watch this. So here is an image where I put these backgrounds together right there, right?
Yeah.
And these are backgrounds for images from this story, High John Conqueror. So I got it. I then had to go in and refine it. So you see what happened? These are the base backgrounds that I dropped in. I refined them to make them, see, I went in and had to sketch, I had to draw some, I had to basically do what a matte painter for films would do, right? So it took me a while because I was still trying to learn this process, right? And from there, I began to have to look at all these images here. I got these images from PicFinder. I actually wrote in text prompts because at that time you could not do image prompts, and I needed silhouettes. First, I was trying to draw the silhouettes. I'm like, what are you doing? Just add in a silhouette. Well, I want on this planet, the creatures are bipedal, whatever the word is, right? They walk upright. But I didn't want to have to sit there and draw them damn elephant heads. What the hell? So what did I do? I had it generate elephant heads for me. And from there, I took those things together and I composited them, right? So for example, with this page here, you'll see here, notice the ink drawings I had. These are all backgrounds from AI where I actually drew them and did paint overs, added effects, even the sky, the rock face there. That's what that is. I then go and use standard flatting techniques with cartooning. And this is what I came up with. And the reason why I didn't actually go in and do a lot of rendering in the character because I wanted the character to stand out from the background, right? Like an animated film. Now, I don't know if I'm going to continue to use this technique, but that was one of the things I did, all right? And here you can use it. See this here, I'm using reference. Now, all of these things, let's go, see if we can go here. Remember the image with the rock face and the elephants?
Yeah.
That's basically what it came out to right there. So it is I'm a hybrid artist. I'm an artist that takes drawings. I use all of the tools. I use 3D, I use photos, I use everything to create my art, right? But the intent is that it still should look like my work. So for example, see these kind of bipedal gazelle creatures? Those creatures, and I'll actually come back to that. Let's see if we can come back to it here. I don't know if the gazelles are in this file here. But yeah, we won't worry about that right now. But so for example, there's a point where the main characters come up on this plantation that is actually the ground of it's a staging ground for the Confederate Army, military, the remnants, because it starts at the end of the war. So this is when this is the first time I began to use image prompts. So I did this drawing. This is one of the main villains from the story, because obviously the old man in the South has to be the main villain in a story that's set in the Civil War, right? Just like Darth Vader, right? He's a really bad guy. And I did this image drawn in Photoshop, inked in Photoshop, or either one, that one or Clip Studio Paint. I then imported that into a software program called Doodle AI by one of my friends, Vladimir Palacio. He's a man of color who lives in Montreal, fantastic programmer. And his work has revolutionized the way I work. From that goes to this. So you see that render? You see how bad that render is? That's not exact, but what it's doing is using edge detection.
So you put this in, you put your drawing into AI.
Into a software program called Doodle AI.
Yeah, this
and
is
it followed. See what it did?
yeah,
It followed the lines in my drawing with a utility called edge detection. It's not exclusive to that software program, but that's what AI often does. From there, I said, oh my God, do I want to use that? And the answer was some of it, right? So I then took that and I added flat color on top. Watch what happens now. From there, I took that AI render and I composited into my drawing. Now, this is where the time savings comes in. To get those folds with the buttons and the line, the seams in that would take hours to do. But here, I actually had a render that gave me photographic phenomena that I could apply, texture, light, form, that I could apply to my already existing drawings. This is how a person, a traditional artist, whether that traditional artist is a analog artist that works on paper and regular chemical-based medium, or a digital illustrator, this is how you should use AI. You should use AI to augment your work, not to do the work from scratch, because that's freaking boring, right? From there, we then add color. You see what I'm saying? I could go in Photoshop and add my highlights, because in this particular case, I still wanted the work to look like a drawing. Still wanted to look like an illustration, because I'm an illustrator, right? That's the point. Adding the tones. You understand? That is the objective. That is the objective for me, I should say, is that I want my work to look like my work. I don't want my work to look like Eric Wilkerson's work. I love Eric Wilkerson, but I don't want my work to look like his. I want to look like Tim Fielder, right? As a visual Afrofuturist, so you can see this image here. It's amazing that I'm using all this Confederate iconography in my work, right? Because, hey, I'm trying to keep it real, right? The bad guys are the Confederates, right? The snowflakes, as Joel calls them, right? So, so the idea is I'm literally taking from this, employing it into my drawings. Do we understand? All right, now, that was the technique I used up to the middle point of last year. And it still took a long time to do, but like I say, and see all these little things, I don't know what that is there. I don't know what this little, that looks like a piece of metal sticking out of its butt or something like that. That's not, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for elements. Same way you mentioned, not Romare Bidden. Who's the other one? The collage artist. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, the brother.
Jacob Lawrence?
Well, no, Romare Bidden. So Romare Bidden was taking photos. He didn't pay for those photos. He was taking them from magazines. He was cutting them up, and he was putting them in collages, in images, to create new images. That is what I am doing with AI. I'm using AI to assist me in the process of creating my images. All right. Now, before I move on to my present technique, are there any more questions before I move on from this?
I don't think so.
Okay. In that case, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Said I was asking Julian if he had any questions.
No, that's pretty clear.
Oh, damn. Really? Oh, great. So, hey, all right. So this is good. I thought y'all were going to rip me to shreds, right? All right. So I'm going to go back to share screen here. The software that I use is this software here. It's called Doodle AI, Vercel, from my brother, Vladimir Palacio. Love this guy's stuff. I know you guys can probably see it. We'll go to dashboard here. See if I can log in. And I've been using this software for some time now. Come on, are we going to log in or what? All right, we'll get there in a second. I might have to leave it open for now. But I'm sorry, did we lock up here? No, we did not. Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. Okay, I didn't know what that was. All right. So I will say this. While this program is opening up, I'm going to stop the share here for a moment. And I need you guys to understand this. I use technology to get my work done. I have always used technology to get my work done. I am afraid in one sense, because there are those who come out who try to demonize and ostracize those who use AI to produce their work. Some of them ask for it, frankly. Some of the folks who use AI, yes, I don't think much of people who just do text prompting, right? I think that's limited. However, they do it, right? My job is not to expend energy on those folks. My job is to refine how my work exists in this new and modern environment. That is what I'm doing. That's what my goal is. And that's what, that's what I'm trying to do. All right, now back here to sharing the screen here. I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna go here. All right, you guys see what I got here? All right, now we're gonna go here to Doodle AI. And you can see here, I've been using it for many, many months. I use it on projects that I'm doing now. I will import a drawing in. You see that? And what it does, it takes my drawing. This is the image I had done. I was doing a test on some ideas I have, right? Now, that render is really abstract, right? Now, Vladimir has presets in his software. He has abstract, he has fine art, he has photographic, photoreal, and he has 3D. And there are a few others, pastel and things like that. Anything that is an analog influence style, I don't use those because I don't want to. I'm only interested in photographic or 3D presets, right? No, because the 3D presets, that's how I do Maddie's rocket. I build a model, I'll add basic lights to it. It gives me some indication of form that I can go in and add the shadows and the detail. So that's part of what I can do here. Many software programs are using this technique, right? I did this here. Well, this was a cover I did for Jackson Comics, right? See that drawing? It wasn't perfect, but what it did, it gave me some indication of how light would fall and how it would use forms. That one was kind of okay. Look at this here. This right here, even though the drawing is there, I didn't care for that at all. So sometimes the effects that you're getting, you can't control, right? But I've been using Doodle AI for some time on most of the images I'm doing. Sometimes they work, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they give me effects that I want to use. See this drawing here? I took a photo and I modified that image and it gave me that. I didn't use it, right? But what it does, it gives me something that I can work from. This is where I was working with students when I was with Dr. Taylor's program at Texas Southern, Dr. Tanisha Taylor. This is from another student. And they went in and they did their drawing. You see what I'm saying? AI has the ability to add rendering and color and emotion to an existing drawing. I don't care what anyone says. That is a legitimate form of creating art. If you start with this, you could end with this, and then tone and color on top of that. I think that is a legitimate form of art. It is much faster than, taking photos, but it is something that exists. It is something that exists. All right, enough of that. Now I'm going to proceed ahead now to the most recent technique. The most recent technique, I'll close Safari because I don't want my machine to get bogged down. Right now, I'm working on the Comet. So when I'm working on the Comet, I'm going to show here. Let's go to the Comet. Any questions about what I've shown you guys so far?
No, I want you to finish showing me all this, and I might have some questions after that.
Okay. Oh Lord. He's going to tear me to ribbons. Now, see this here? That photo? That's a classic photo of the 1920s, 1930s skyline. I got to draw that, or I can utilize it as I've been using photos and things like that in my work for some time, right? So with that page, that ends up like this. You see? And that can work. A lot of illustrations. So for example, here in the upper right-hand corner, you have this city, right? its crowd is populated. That started out from this. So this image here was a sketch that I did, that I used as an image prompt. That image prompt was then put into Doodle AI. That's pretty good. That's amazing. And by the way, when you're using Doodle AI, you are using this as an image prompt. You're then utilizing a written prompt to give the software some indication of the lighting, time of day, what film stock, if you want to use that, right? Again, I'm not trying to model my work after another artist. I'm literally trying to produce something that gives me photoreal phenomena. And from there, see, same thing. These are all drawings from the Comet. See those backgrounds there? Those backgrounds come from that. All right, I drew it. I wanted the tones. So that's how we went in there. Now, another thing, and this is where the AI guilt part comes in. With this particular drawing, let's say, let's keep going here. I'm going to go to this one, this page here. I left my drawing lines visible in there because I was like, oh, I want them to still know it's a drawing. But what a waste of time. What a waste of time. It's like, dude, you gave it a drawing. Why would you then go in trying to show the drawing? Why not just enhance, like a matte painter would do, what's already there?
That's because that's what artists do. And that's the thing that I think separates you from the people who are writing words. That's what separates.
Oh, of course. Of course. But
would you say, Tim, would you say that text prompts, that what you're doing is a superior method or a more creative method than text prompts?
Oh, there's no question of that. I just, text prompts are like, I wrote something and it gave me something that I said, oh, wow, look, I created the art. No. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm doing is I'm using text prompts to generate elements for my illustrations. I'm not using text prompts to generate the illustration for me. That's boring. I think that's seriously unethical, because then you're, and I think it's actually kind of, I don't know if I would necessarily call it foolish, but I would say that is really allowing someone else to produce your work. That's not what you're doing. What you're supposed to be doing is using this as tools to help you produce your work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I still have to go. So for example, remember that drawing I did? I still had to import that in, and it gave me a nice little tone. And then what I'm saying is that just the drawings, there's a feeling of this is what I would have done had I used ink wash, right, on that. And I still had to go in and add tones. This is when I was experimenting, trying to get some of the images and the ideas correct with the Comet. Now, I'm going to show you guys the tool, and you can see here, I'm using photos here. I always like to collect reference online to get a style, say, okay, man, I love these traditional, of romance novels and these Reader's Digest. I love that stuff, right? So I want that stuff because the Comet is set in a period piece. I want to evoke that time period, right, in my own way. So we'll go here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go now. I'm going to stop share. And I'm going to show you guys a software program that I've been using called VizCom. VizCom, I've begun to utilize with, initially began, I'll be employing it on the Comet, is working with my good friend, Dr. Ronaldo Anderson, like the three of us here, all fellow Afrofuturists. And we're doing a project called Quantum. And hopefully we'll be doing it for the Department of Agriculture. You might say, okay, what's important about that? Well, I have begun to experience over the last 2 to 3 years where my work is not always being utilized for entertainment purposes. What's begun to happen slowly is the work has begun to slowly integrate itself into the public policy arena. And in order to do that, I've had to really dig down and try to use even more innovative software to get the feeling that I want. So we'll go here to VizCom here. I'm going to share my screen again. And I use VizCom. It doesn't cost that much. I hope you guys can see that on the screen.
Yeah, we can see
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Tell
All
me
right.
how much. You can cut this out. Tell me how much longer we're gonna go.
We're going to go for about 5 more minutes.
Yeah, we're about an hour in. So yeah. Okay.
All right, right. So hour 10, hour 15 minutes. That's good. All right. So watch this here. So we're going to go to this one. All right. It's going to take a second for it to open here. All right. Y'all see that, right? You see it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That image. Let me move this to the side here so that we can get that out of the way. That image. If we go here to layers, I'm going to cut all these guys off here. I'm going to turn them off. And this is the iterative process of what AI really does quite well. So this drawing started from this sketch that was done in Photoshop. Last year, we were working with a think tank called N Square, BSAM, the Black Speculative Arts Movement. And from there, I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import that into VizCom. VizCom excels at creating beautifully rendered elements. It also uses written prompts, but it uses as a visual prompt. That using edge detection. The beauty of it is, see what it did? See that soft light? It's very, very hard to do. Still following the drawings, but then I could iterate on top of that by doing this. See? I'm changing it. It's still following my drawings. I'm asking, hey, I need you to put in these little, what is it, fans in the skyline, right? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Windmills. I was just saying windmills.
Windmills, yes, windmills outside. See, from there, that then turns to this. So this software allows me to go in and to continually draw elements, right? You see these here? So those are part of my drawings. I'm envisioning a world, the water here, the water lines, I'm envisioning a world that's like, my wife is from New Orleans. So I'm saying, here's a city that exists below sea level. So there are these desalination becomes part of the economy where their job, how do they survive? They take water from the ocean, right? Which is overrun the land and they're making fresh water. That's how certain societies will exist in the future. That then turns to this. See? How it's giving me more subtle effects. These are machines that are pulling water from the clouds. Right? Then I added that little car there because I said, hey, why not? Then I had a vehicle here. I began to do that drawing. I iterated again. It gave me this effect. And from there, I went in and touched that up. So the entire image is a back and forth technique where I'm drawing, I'm getting an image, it's based on my drawing. But see, what I would still do with this, I would add, is that once I did those drawings, I didn't use any Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint from this. I was just using this software to give me this kind of effect. But that is a beautiful, beautiful drawing, beautiful image based on my drawing.
Yeah.
Let's go back and I'll show you last one here and this will be fine. And then I'll have demonstrated my technique. All right.
Julian, what do you think about Tim's process and how he goes about this?
I think it's a really interesting sort of intervention that helps artists with skill sort of realize that skill quicker, right? I mean, I do think much of Tim's tool use is an intervention in process, it's not an intervention in creative thinking or creative practice, more like he's still creating, but he's shortening certain elements of his process with the AI tool, which is a real difference from, as you say, like a prompt artist, because, again, I would argue that one of the things about AI right now, because it is new, we have not yet built up a kind of substantive qualitative language to deal with it, right? It all looks so good, but part of that is because you've never seen it before. Once you start to see it, then the ways that it failed to sort of have the kind of style, as you point to, that, you know, talented artists have, I think that's something that people will start to understand and engage with, right? Because ultimately all AI is referential. It's not necessarily creating something, right? So you still have the advantage of, as a human being creative. Like, you're still making things from scratch. You still have the inspiration that is internal and can always make something that is real. And to your point earlier, as people sort of recognize the way that AI is learning, there is going to be a whole segment of artists that never put anything online. The only way that you engage with them is face to face or with paper, or the only way you can engage with them is that, like, you somehow have a direct sort of person to person experience. They may not necessarily be paper artists. They might be doing things digital, but they're going to do it in a closed system, right? That doesn't allow for scanning and things like that. And that will be one of the ways that the art world and the creative world creates the sort of distance between what is AI versus what is. But I agree with Tim. Ultimately, there are people whose jobs are going to disappear, but that's always a consequence of technological innovation. Jobs always disappear, right? No one cries about the death of the blacksmith for good reason, right? But, you know, we we we've had a number of those kind of situations, right? There are lots of technological transformations that happen even in our lifetime where jobs have fundamentally changed. Not always for the good for an individual worker, to your point, but jobs have changed. And we were always under pressure in terms of machines, because more robotics have been introduced. The auto industry, I'm in Michigan. Obviously, the auto industry, the primary transformation related to that is automation. Yes, they moved factories, but really automation. They just don't need as many people in the factory as they used to, right? And so what Tim is doing, fundamentally, he's still drawing. Fundamentally, he's still making it up. You know, he's still like going like, I want to see something, and makes it physically happen. And then he just uses Doodle AI to do stuff that takes so long that he don't want to do it. And then he fixes it when it's wrong. He's like, oh yeah, I don't like that. That's bad. That bad. But this is okay. This is okay. But, you know, it's like he removed the stuff in the middle that was unpleasant, which is ultimately what everybody wants from technology, to remove the stuff in the middle that's unpleasant, right?
There are those folks.
I'm going to give you the last word, and then we can wrap it up.
Okay, and that's a perfect segue. And why they say this is the last of the Comet talks, and I want to really express my appreciation to Joel and Julian for doing this, and to Carnegie Hall for letting me do this, and the Children's Arts Carnival for allowing all this. Michigan State and Boston University rock. Send your kids there. These guys need it, and the medium needs it, and that's a wonderful thing. So I will say this. I am not your enemy. I am not your enemy. I am not when I say I am not when I say your, I am not the art industry's enemy. I am no different than Mike Sands, who did Shatter back in the 80s. I'm no different than any artist, Craig Mullins. I use digital technology to create images that have not existed before. I am merely trying to innovate as an Afrofuturist, but trying to do it in such a way where I can tell my stories more efficiently, in a greater quantity, with no discernible drop in quality. I am fearful of the level of pushback against AI. I understand it. The regulations need to be put into place for sure. But if we intend to move forward like photographers, right? Photography came, people got bent out of shape. It didn't affect photography. right? It still doesn't mean that not everybody walking around is a great photographer. They're great digital photographers. They're great analog photographers. Our job is we define what art is, not those who are not artists. We define. And for those who say that the human element is not present in AI, I disagree. It's all built on humanity. And as humans, we could determine the path and the direction it moves in by literally doing what we always do as artists, which is employing those things that are in our environment and bending it to our will.
I think that sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we're out. Peace.